Comrade Manohar, Comrade Karki, Comrade Shelby and other comrades, and leaders of the and intellectuals who are here, I know many comrades who are versed in contemporary politics and other things. And I am very sorry that I cannot speak in your mother tongue, Telugu. Sorry, Tamil. But I cannot. Therefore, I will be speaking in English. I think that Comrade Shelby will translate it. And I haven't prepared a written paper for you because I was very too busy. Therefore, I will be presenting certain observations on the current international and Indian situation from a left perspective, so that I may not be going into a description, but I will be explaining some viewpoints which you may also share, or which may also you can debate or discussion, which will help us our further discussion in the. So, comrades, today coming to the point. Internationally and in India, at a global level, the reactionary, the fascist forces, which we call them neo-fascist, because today it is under neoliberalism. So under neoliberalism, the fascist forces are advancing. They are overcoming their hurdles one by one, and they are advancing. And the corporates who are propping them up, the ruling fascist regimes, the corporates their profits rates are skyrocketing. Their profits are going up. Vast majority of the world population, you know, that the working class and the oppressed all over the world are going down. The whole world, for example, in our country, India is now characterized by international agencies as a citadel of global poverty. A citadel of global poverty. The whole world is becoming a wasteland of unemployment. All these are descriptions given by international agencies, not by our views. But the super profits made by corporates are increasing. And you know, the Musk, the biggest corporate billionaire, who is the leading who holds the what is called in our country like a super minister in USA, along with the neo-fascist far right Trump. In our country also, you know, RSS the longest running and the fascist the biggest fascist organization in the world. RSS is qualified as the longest running and the biggest fascist organization that is controlling the regime of India. And we are also in a very pitiable situation today, and things are moving in a very dangerous way, because RSS today, this year, it is celebrating its centenary. And it is Kumbh Mela. I don't know whether they have already declared. Only a formal declaration is needed. In reality, everything is already there. Whether Hindu Rashtra is already declared or not, we don't know. So whatever is there in a modeling pace towards their ultimate objective of establishing a majoritarian Hindutva or Hindu Rashtra. That is the situation today. So everywhere the reactionary forces are on the offensive, working class and the oppressed are on the defensive. And the parties, the so-called left parties, those who are supposed to lead the working class and the oppressed at a global level, they are on the defensive. And they are not in a position to ideologically, politically, organizationally face, challenge, overcome the threats, the challenges, the race created by the fascist forces, corporate fascist forces today. This is the situation, overall situation. Its manifestations are different in different countries. In India, its manifestation, you know. At a global level also, its manifestations are there. The ascendance of Trump to power with a thumping majority, not only for himself but even the Congress and the Senate. In India also, even though Modi has lost a majority mark in Indian Parliament, still RSS is advancing with its political tool. BJP, RSS is advancing with its agenda. We know the situation is very serious today. So how we will understand, how we will approach this question from a left perspective, that is the point that I want to discuss here. Of course, my presentation may not be will be covering everything, but I just for our discussion I am presenting my opinion, and we will, if need, we will have a discussion or a debate on that question. This is what I want to say to start with. Even though Modi is not having a majority mark, etc., etc. Now Parliament is a mere spectator, we can see. It's not an edifice. Policy decisions are taken in corporate boardrooms. We know very clearly, because all policy decisions of our country are not at all even discussed in Parliament. And even though bills, all these things are there, irrelevant. Many things you know. Even on the latest, for example, these what is called this Waqf Act, we know everything. No discussion, even the JPC, even in the Joint Parliamentary Committee also no discussion is possible. So now this was not possible in the during the period of the classical fascism, because there Mussolini and Hitler, they had to abolish the parliament. But today fascists are capable, neo-fascists are capable to keep the parliament. Still they can effectively carry forward what is their fascist agenda. So this is a change. Some people are saying, some of our left friends, they are saying they are comparing classical fascism with modern neo-fascism. They are saying that fascism is not there because parliament is there. We have many, even court is there. Even we can have some apparent things are there, therefore fascism is not there. Only fascist symptoms are there. Some of our left friends are saying only symptoms of fascism are there. Comrades, on all these questions, what should be the Marxist approach? Or what should be the left approach? Shall a social phenomenon repeat as such? Shall a social phenomenon, can you have a test copy of? Or shall you have a straight jacket understanding of? A copy-paste understanding of a social phenomenon? Is it possible? According to our understanding, every social phenomenon is constantly changing. So, during the period of the classical fascism, that is the colonial period, before the second, before 50s, and even after that also, of course, the fascist situation at that time and the fascist situation today is not the same. Even though some apparent similarities are there, in essence, many differences are there. Over 100 years of our history, many qualitative changes are there. On that question, I want to say something first. For example, we all agree, all comrades who are assembled here agree that fascism, the ultimate gainer is, fascism is not any particular religion or thing. It is corporate capital. This capital, which is the ultimate gainer of fascism. This capital, which is the biggest force behind a fascist regime, we know. And there is a merger between this reactionary corporate capital and the ruling regime of the state, and that is in essence fascism, we know. But today, unless the pre-war period, under the classical period, today after the post-war period, in the post-war, in our way it is the post-war neo-colonial period, because colonialism is over and all colonial methods of oppression are also irrelevant now. Now more serious, more pernicious and more sinister, according to Mao Zedong or Chinese Communist Party. Today more sinister, more pernicious, more dangerous form of plunder is going on, exploitation is going on, loot is going on, oppression is going on. And therefore, with respect to that, how we will explain all these questions, what should be the core of our understanding, and then we will come to certain concrete issues in relation to that. Unlike the earlier period, over a century, many qualitative changes have taken place in the laws of motion of finance capital. Many qualitative changes have taken place. For example, now instead of a nation-centered production, just one example. Now production is not nation-centered, country-based. Production is international, globalized. Why? Capital is also internationalized. Now, instead of a particular nation, under the colonial period, mostly capital was nation-centered. But today, after the even though according to latest understanding, imperialism is capitalism transformed into imperialism, still the dominance of industrial capital was still there. Even though this trend towards speculation was there, there was some possibility of intervention. For example, in the 30s we know, because of speculation and because of financial the intervention, the crisis came, that is the depression everything. But there could have been some intervention there. And that is why welfare state came. State-led, there are a series of controls over capital. Welfare capitalism came. And that is what is called, at least up to the 70s, there was a kind of a relationship between industrial capital, productive capital and speculative capital. That means because of state-led development, state intervention, many possibilities were there. But after the 70s, what has happened is that there is a total cut-off. This means industrial capital and finance capital, that relation is not at all there now. Capital, finance capital is cut off its link from production altogether. That is the basis today. There is no link actually. Now the corporates, the super billionaires of our country or internationally, they are not in the realm of production. They are extracting surplus value because we are leftists, that is what I am saying. They are extracting surplus value by remaining in the sphere of speculation, not in the sphere of production. There are many avenues, many possibilities, many options are there for the most reactionary capital to extract surplus value. They need not go to production, they can remain in the sphere of circulation, speculation. This possibility is an important thing that we have to understand. Along with that, what happened, I have already said about the production. When we speak about Trump, when we speak about Modi, when we speak about Adani, Ambani, or American billionaires, this question should be the core of our discussion. That is why I am explaining these things in a brief way. Coming in imperialist countries, that was an understanding that is spread by many. Fascism means that country will be an imperialist power or an imperialist country. But in a neo-colonial country, in a dependent country, in an oppressed country, fascism will not come. This is very leftists are thinking like that. That is a problem that when we speak about a country fascist, some of our friends will not accept because that country is not imperialist. It is still dependent. How can fascism be there? This is also a question that we have to seriously discuss. What happened is that after the post-war or in the post-war period, the laws of motion, the logic of capital has undergone drastic changes because of many developments. Most important one is technological. What happened? Because of the advancements in technology, I will come to AI, all this digitization, etc. These are serious questions which the community should discuss. It should not be left to non-communists and other intellectuals to discuss. We have to discuss. The working class, the leadership of the working class has to discuss this question. That's what I am saying. What happened? From the late 60s and 70s onward, what happened we know. A series of technological advancements were there. What was there? There were production technologies, production and processing technologies. Because of these production and processing technologies, the immediate outcome was an international division of labor. Instead of locating production in a particular country, there can be a dislocation or a relocation of production from one country to another. How? The production process itself can be decomposed into several stages. And the labor intensive stages, less skilled stages can be transferred to cheap labor economies or countries. That is one point whereby this new international division of labor came, and many labor-intensive lines of production were shifted to Afro-Asian Latin American countries. While capital-intensive production, lucrative profit that means where wage rates are high, that will be there in imperialist countries. So countries like India became a destination of capital investment where wage rate is cheap or inexhaustible source of cheap labor is there. So that was one initiative or one development that actually started the phenomenon of this internationalization of production. Production can be, I already said, it can be decomposed into several stages, which we call multi-stage decomposition of production. And therefore, an internationalization of production, along with that, as I have already mentioned, capital had gone into the sphere of circulation. Capital had gone into the sphere of speculation, where profit spinning, money spinning possibilities are there. And those who are remaining in the sphere of production, that is industrial capital, such a capitalists were collapsing, where employment oriented, job oriented, employment generation is there, their profit rates are going down. While in the sphere of speculation, where profits are high, no employment is being generated because of the specificities of modern technology. All these we have to see in a proper perspective to have a concrete Marxist left understanding of the situation today. I will come to that in a more detail. Now, it may be I will come to the point later, but general things I will come after explaining this. You see one more thing. What is happening today in the labor sector, working class sector at a global level? You might have heard about informalization. The number of unorganized, informal working class is going up at a global level, where there is no social security, where is no job wage condition, there is no fixed employment. Vast majority of the working class, even in Chennai also you know, street vendors, what is called rank trades and home workers, home-based workers. So hundreds of professions are developing. All these are in the informal, unorganized sector. This is called informalization of the working class. Global informalization of the working class. Not only in India, 60% of the world working class today, 60% of the world working class today is in the informal, unorganized sector. Even in developed capitalist countries, even in imperialist countries, large share of the working class is becoming informal, unorganized. In India, almost 95% of the workforce, almost 95% of the living working class in India belong to informal, unorganized sectors. That is called informalization of the working class. Nobody there to organize them. The left is failing. Communist parties are not there. Who are organizing them? Some NGOs are there, but the left it is not in the agenda of the left in the proper way. This is also a serious question. And these informal workers, they are the most super exploited. They are the enough source of profit making for international capital and their junior partners, Indian corporates. This is also happening. But we are not, the left parties are not going into, their trade unions are not going into, the rightist organization will leave. But these questions are not taken up in the proper perspective. This is also connected with the transformations that are taking place and that are going on. In India, for example, Adani, Ambani. Why? Because this internationalization of capital enabled capitalists from countries like India to be integrated with the globalization or internationalization of capital. Now they are part of the internationalization of production and internationalization of capital. That is why Adani, even though India is a lackey of US imperialism, you know why I am calling a lackey, Modi regime. Even poor countries like Colombia, Latin American countries resisted. When the Trump government decided to put these immigrants, illegal immigrants, into shackles, their hands and legs, women, children, ropes on their waist and legs, putting them in military plane, Latin American countries opposed. We are not agreeing that we will send our flight. So Colombia, a poor country, sent its flight for deporting their nationals, immigrants, illegal, undocumented immigrants from USA. Many Latin America, Brazil, Mexico, what Modi did? It is standard operating procedure. That is the reply given to Parliament. You have heard. The official explanation given by Modi government to Indian Parliament is, it is standard operating procedure. Standard operating procedure. That is putting immigrants in military planes. Never in history, you can check, never in history this has taken place. For the first time in world history. Which is intimidating a country. When you are sending a military plane, it is a challenge, it is an intimidation. It is a questioning of its sovereignty. Its rights, that country is challenged by American imperialism. So that is questioned by many poor countries. But Modi government, a lackey, a bootlicker of US imperialism, is simply observing it. Admitting it. Second plane came today, Amritsar, 115, 119, how many? Again came. That also in military plane. But Latin American countries will not accept. In spite of that, in spite of the regime, Indian state being a lackey, because time constraint is there, otherwise I will explain. So a lackey of US imperialism, there also Adani, Ambani can be partners. They are also integrated with international capital today. That is why Adani can go to Iran, Adani can go to even Sri Lanka, to Nepal, anywhere Adani is in Israel, and anywhere Adani can go, Ambani can go, because they are integrated with us junior partners. They are not masters, they are only juniors of international capital. So the character, the situation is fast changing. That also the left should understand in the proper perspective. We need not go into issues. For example, what Modi is doing in USA, his discussion with the Trump obsolete modular nuclear weapons are being dumped into India. Everything you know, details. These modular nuclear plants. That is what is called energy. A statement is a energy transaction discussion. That is the title. So many these are in the budget, you know, threatened by Modi. I mean Trump. Modi budget, you know, Commodore Karki mentioned about the budget. So in that budget, you know what happened? 30% American products imported into India, 7.5%, all the tariff rates of US products have been reduced to 7.5% tariff in the budget. And foreign direct investment, you know, international capital, American, US insurance companies were given 100%, opened up the Indian market. All these are there in the budget. So these things I am not going into details. But comrades, YA said about the Daki, that character of Indian regime, especially today ruling. Who is ruling? RSS is ruling. We will not say that it is BJP. BJP is only a political tool of RSS. Mohan Bhagwat has himself said we can use any political tool. We are capable to use any political tool. Kejriwal failed. He was bargaining with Hanuman. But in the Ram Rajya card he failed. This Hanuman plan will not compete with the Ram Rajya card. So Kejriwal failed. He was complaining to Mohan Bhagwat. This BJP is not following RSS principles properly. I am following like that. That was Kejriwal. Okay, this is not a stage for questioning Kejriwal. But this is the situation. So RSS is capable to use any political party in India as its tool. That they have said. I am not saying that all political parties, but they are saying we are capable to use any political party. And that RSS, what is the character of RSS, you know? During the Vietnam War, we are usually saying these things. During the Vietnam War, the world over, even anti-communist, Bertrand Russell is not a communist. Even Bertrand Russell, like liberal people, were going against US imperialism. Russell's speech, radio speech is there to American soldiers, troops. American soldiers, there is a famous speech of Bertrand Russell, radio speech, appealing to the American soldiers to go away from Vietnam, don't enter into a war suppressing the Vietnamese people. Such was the world situation. At that situation, Golwalkar, in the 60s, the leader of the RSS sent a letter to American president. You know what in the letter he said? America is the leader of the free world. Today, Dharma and Adharma is entering into a struggle, into a war, and America is on the side of Dharma. So RSS is always with America. You can examine whether this is correct or not. This is history, this is documented. That is RSS. So that RSS is now leading the Indian regime today. So you can imagine what is the extent of this decay, the extent of this neo-colonial dependency that is there on the part of the Indian regime. Still, Indian bourgeoisie, big bourgeoisie is capable to participate as junior partners of imperialism because of internationalization of capital. That is what happened today. So nothing is constant, everything is changing. You cannot say that before Second World War or 50 years this was the situation, therefore situation will not change. Everything is changing. So that is the Marxist approach. That otherwise we will be in a we will be in a straight jacket. We cannot understand the concrete situation today, and even for analyzing neo-fascism also this problem will come.
India
industry, many of our friends, especially in other countries, who are closely associating with us they are very forcefully saying international industrial proletariat. They are always saying. What is this international industrial proletariat today? Whether it is a homogeneous category. What is the Indian working class? What is the working class situation in America, in Europe? Whether they are same? No. They are heterogeneous. They are divided into many categories. Their problems are different. And if communists are going from a textbook based understanding, they cannot resolve this question. They have to come to the reality. That is why we say our, for example, I am not boasting, I am just saying CPM and Red Star as a position. We say that in India, the working class should be, or if you have to make a class analysis, if you have to understand the working class in India properly, you have to understand the caste system also. Many people may have difference. Because how surplus value is extracted in India? How surplus value is extracted in India? It is based on caste. It is caste based. Every job, every work division, wealth appropriation, political power, cultural power and intellectual, everywhere, art, everything. Everywhere, caste is safely seated. Caste is safely seated on the throne of IIT, Madras IIT. Caste is safely seated. Caste is migrating to Silicon Valley. You know all these things? Yeah. What is her name? Chema Sawant. A lady. In papers you have read it. Chema Sawant, a lady, Indian lady, an Indian American. She moved a resolution in Seattle City Council, America. What is the basis? Untouchability. We are exporting caste to America. America is exporting capital, India is exporting caste. Our people elite, caste elite. Going from Tamil Nadu also. I need not go explain the names. They are spreading caste there, untouchability, discrimination there. So this caste system in America is also there is various other kinds of things are there. Of course, indigenous people, African Americans, Hispanics, many people are being oppressed, okay. That is another thing, but caste and untouchability is a different thing. Even in the Roman Empire, slaves were there, slaves can be teachers. There are many Roman history where slaves were teachers of the lords, students. Slave can become a teacher in Roman Empire. Slavery, but caste is different. Untouchability, a man is a youth cannot pass through cycle in Tamil Nadu also. You know what will happen. If he goes through certain other areas where caste Hindus are living, then he will not be living. So this is India. So I am saying this question. The Shama Muhammad passed a resolution. That resolution was passed by Seattle Council. Why Modi? What Modi government did? Her mother is dying in a very critical situation in Bangalore. Shama Sawant. Modi government didn't give her visa. When Trump is deporting hundreds of Indians in shackles, chains, Modi is denying visa to an Indian American, a non-Indian American, a political activist. She is denied visa because her mother is ill, she cannot meet her mother because she passed the resolution. This is caste system. So we have to, communists have to go through very seriously whether we are able to, whether we have been capable to understand the Indian society in the proper perspective. At least how surplus value is extracted in India, how division of labor is done in India, what is the role of caste in India. This question should be seriously discussed.
தோழர்களே, உதாரணமாக விவாதத்துக்காக சில கருத்துக்களை நான் முன்வைக்கிறேன். பொதுவா நம்ம என்ன சொன்னா சர்வதேச தொழிலாளர் வர்க்கம் அதோட ஒற்றுமை பத்தி தொடர்ச்சியாக கம்யூனிஸ்ட் பேசிக்கொண்டே இருக்கிறோம். ஆனா என்னன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா சர்வதேச தொழிலாளர் மத்தியில கூட எல்லா தொழிலாளர்களுக்கும் ஒரே மாதிரி பிரச்சனைகள் இருக்குதா, இல்ல எல்லா தொழிலும் ஒரே மாதிரி பிரிக்கப்பட்டிருக்காங்கன்னா அது மிக கேள்விக்குறியான விஷயம் தான். அதை சர்வதேசம் பார்க்க வேண்டியிருக்கு. அதே போல நம்ம இந்தியா பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் சிபிஎம் என்ன சொல்றோம்னா, இந்தியா பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் இந்த நீங்க வர்க்க பிரிவினை இந்திய வர்க்கத்தை சரியா புரிஞ்சுக்கணும்னா இந்தியாவில் இருக்க ஜாதி கட்டுமானத்தை நீங்க புரிஞ்சுக்கணும் நாங்க முன்வைக்கிறோம். ஏன் அப்படின்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா உபரி மதிப்பு சொல்லுவோம். உபரி மதிப்பு சுரண்டல் இங்க எப்படி நடைபெறுகிறதுனா அது ஜாதி வழியாக தான் நடைபெறுகிறது. அது இல்லாம வேலை பிரிவினையாகட்டும், இல்ல இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய அறிவுஜீவி தரம், இல்ல இங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய கலை பண்பாடு எல்லாமே ஒரு பார்ப்பனியமயமாக்கப்பட்ட நேரம் இருக்குது. அதனால இங்க இருக்கிற பிரிவினையை ஜாதியோட நம்ம எனக்கு தான் பார்க்கணும். ஏன் பார்க்கணும்னா இங்க இருக்க தலை சேர்ந்த ஐஐடி தலைமை யார் இருக்கான்னா ஒரு பார்ப்பன சமூகத்தை சார்ந்தா இருக்குது. அதே போல இங்க இருந்து சிலிக்கான் வேலி, அமெரிக்கன் சிலிக்கான் வேலியில மென்பொருள் தொழில்நுட்ப பணிக்கு சென்றவர்கள் கூட இங்க இருந்து போன உயர்தர பார்ப்பனங்க என்ன பண்றாங்க, அங்க போய் தீண்டாமை கடைபிடிக்கிறாங்க. அதுக்கு எதிராக செமா சாவந்த் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு பெண்மணி இங்க அந்த சிஆர்டி நகர்குழுல ஒரு கோரிக்கை முன்வைக்கிறாங்க. இங்க இருக்க அன்டச்சபிலிட்டியை நீக்கணும். அதை கொண்டு வரது யாருன்னா தமிழ்நாட்டுல இருந்து மிக முக்கியமா போன பார்ப்பனர் செஞ்சிருக்காங்க குற்றச்சாட்டு வைக்கிறாங்க. அப்ப என்ன நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கணும், அமெரிக்கா இங்க இருக்க மூலதனத்தை சொல்லி எடுத்துட்டு போகுது, இந்தியா இங்க இருந்து ஜாதி ஏற்றுமதி செஞ்சு அங்க அனுப்புறாங்க. அப்ப இதுல இருந்தே புரிஞ்சுக்க அந்த சமூகம் எப்படி இருக்குது. ஏன்னா அமெரிக்கால நிறைய சிக்கல்கள் இருக்கு. ஏன்னா இது மட்டும் ஜாதி மட்டும் சிக்கல் இல்ல. அமெரிக்கால பாத்தீங்கன்னா அங்க இருக்க மண்ணின் மைந்தர்கள், அங்க இருக்கிற அப்ரோ அமெரிக்கர்கள், அதே போல ஸ்பானிஷ் மக்கள், இவர்களுக்கு பல்வேறு வகையான சிக்கல்கள் இருக்குதா, நம்ம இல்லைன்னு சொல்ல. ஆனா இந்த ஜாதிங்கிற இந்த தீண்டாமை கொடுமைங்கிறது இந்தியர்களை இங்கிருந்து கொண்டு போய் சேர்த்ததான். அதே போல அடிமைகள் ஆசிரியர்களா ஆன வரலாறு ரோம வரலாற்றுல நம்ம பார்த்துருக்காங்க. அடிமையா இருந்தது கூட பிற்காலத்துல ஆசிரியர்களா மாறி அந்த பணி செய்ய முடிஞ்சிருக்கு. அப்படி ஒரு சூழ்நிலை இந்தியாவை நம்ம பார்க்கவே முடியாது. இதுதான் இங்க இருக்க ஜாதிகள். ஆனா இங்க இருக்கிற அமைப்பு புரிஞ்சுக்கணும்னா நீங்க ஜாதி வேற்றுமையை முழுசா உருவாக்கணும் அப்படின்னு தான் தோழர் சொல்லியிருக்காரு. அது முக்கியமா உபரி மதிப்பு எப்படி இங்க களவாடப்படுது, இந்த உபரி மதிப்பு யார் கைக்கு போய் சேருது, ஏன் இந்த சமூகம் இன்னமும் இந்த வேலை பிரிவினை இதே நிலை நீடிக்குங்கிறத நம்ம உள்வாங்கிக்கணும். அதை நம்ம கம்யூனிஸ்டுகள் அதன் மீது கவனம் வைத்து அதை ரொம்ப கூர்மையா நம்ம பார்த்தாதான் அதுக்கான தீர்வு விடும்.
I am not saying don't misunderstand me that it is not from Tamil Nadu alone. Don't misunderstand like that. I am not saying that caste is bouncing back with intensified vigor in Kerala also. I am coming from Kerala. Their caste is bouncing back with intensified vigor. Very dominant now. Caste is coming back with more power everywhere. So this is the situation in India. So why I said this much is, when we say about the working class, the international, the proletariat, according to the concrete situation of countries, the character, the problems confronted by the working class are different in different geographical locations. You cannot have a same what is called a yardstick or a same solution. Generally okay, but when you come to the real context solution, you have to apply, you have to understand the situation concretely. There what happened? There we failed, communists failed. That is why the oppressed people in India, who are the oppressed people, when we say internationally Marxist slogan, Leninist slogan, what is a Lenin slogan? What is a Comintern slogan? Working class and the oppressed unite. Workers and oppressed peoples of the world unite. That is a central slogan today. Central slogan is not workers of the world unite. You know all these things. That is before Comintern, second Congress of the Comintern. It was Comrade Lenin who in the second Congress of the Comintern, Moscow 1920, Lenin inserted another slogan, workers and oppressed peoples of the world unite. That is a central slogan. Why? According to Comrade Lenin, there are two streams for world revolution. All these things you know. One is socialist revolution in imperialist countries, capitalist imperialist countries. The other is people's democratic revolution in Afro-Asian and Indian countries. Today, after the Second World War, in the post-war neo-colonial period, all these countries are oppressed by imperialism through manifold ways. So along with that, politically, economically, militarily, all these things you know, culturally. Many other means are there. So apart from this, each country has its own specific forms of oppression. In India, caste is a most important social category institution that is oppressing the working class. The oppressed. Who are the working class in India? Majority of the working class is the lower caste, the untouchables in India. That is also a problem. So if you are saying that caste is superstructure, when the communists come to power, caste will wither away, or when modernity advances, caste will wither away, is it true? Caste can cut across any social system. He can safely, as I already said, he can safely sit on the throne of modern technology, industry, science. He can safely sit in IIT. Science and technology, everywhere. So caste can cut across any social system today. That we must understand. It is not a mechanical understanding of caste as Indian feudalism, like some so-called communists say. No. Caste can cut across any religion. That is caste. So the communists also should understand that if we have to have a program, then we should understand that in the fight against capital, in the struggle against capital, these slogans like international industrial proletariat, like slogans, some communist parties from Europe or sometimes they will say Eurocentric positions. But we have to understand the concrete situation. That is what I am saying. So when we say about all these things, we have to have more clarity, more clear understanding of the concrete, international and country-specific situation. In our case, Indian situation. Only then we will be capable to move forward. That is what I am saying. Neo-fascism today. We know capital everywhere. That is no change. That is a Marxist position. Its material basis is finance capital. Today most degenerated, most corrupt. That is the essence of capital today. And more than 90% of these so-called finance capital, which is now flourishing, has nothing to do with production also. We know. It is in the sphere of speculation and financial sphere. Stock markets, everything. Leading financiers, corporates are now not at all having anything to do with the production, as I already said. They are remaining in the sphere of speculation. So in this context, what is ideological basis? This is material basis. The situation and all these things we have to understand. Now we know that under neoliberalism, after the 70s, when this imperialism confronted another crisis, internationally the left also was facing many setbacks. Soviet Union had already degenerated to social imperialism. Social imperialism means imperialism. Similarly, China also, by the 70s, China also gone over to the capitalist road and path. Now it is also an imperialist power competing with the US imperialism. Trump is only discussing with China now. He cannot treat with China when he, like Modi or others. He will be very respectful to Xi Jinping. And that is the point that we are going to see. Now, China is also an imperialist power today. Because you cannot have Anglo-Saxon norms of imperialism or capital expansion in China. China has its own character. That is why Chinese imperialism with the Chinese characteristics, not in socialism with the Chinese characteristics, imperialism with the Chinese characteristics. So Chinese to understand Chinese imperialism, you cannot apply Western notions of imperialism or monopoly, etc. It is different. They have their own methods and their own norms. That's another question. Okay. So after the 70s, what happened? Welfare state collapsed, taking advantage of the setbacks of the left, international left, overall, because in the 30s, as I already mentioned, imperialism faced a severe crisis. but the left was advancing. In spite of many ideological deviations, many deviations were there in the 30s also. We are openly saying, I need not go into details. But in spite of that, left was advancing internationally. Therefore, to overcome the crisis, certain restraints were put on finance capital. That means capital. That is why state-led development, etc. Controls, progressive taxation, many restrictions, international mobility, on that, many restrictions were there. And it continued. But by the 70s, capitalism means crisis. The inherent crisis of capitalism will be there always, because that is Marxism. This exploitation, because you know everything. That is when this vast majority of the people are being depressed, or vast majority is pushed more and more into poverty. What will happen? Market will be reducing, collapsing, and this profit will be going down. Everything we know. So therefore, market expansion is also needed. At the same time, profit rate should not go down. But what happened, we know, because of state-led development, which is also called the golden age of capitalism by theorists. Many people said that this Keynesian welfare state, that was a golden age of capitalism that lasted up to 70s, okay. But by the 70s, another crisis, which is more serious than the crisis of the 30s. In the 30s, only depression was there. But in the 70s, along with the depression, stagnation, inflation also came. So therefore, stagflation, these are political economic questions. I need not go into those details. So when this crisis started, or crisis came again, what happened? The left was not there, or left was weak. This situation enabled the capital to resort to neoliberalism. Unfettered, uncontrolled, unhindered freedom to capital international mobility, cross-border mobility. So everywhere this is superimposed. These conditions for capital expansion are superimposed. And we also know what happened. Under neoliberalism, capital entered into the sphere of speculation, and as many analysts are also there, they are saying that today, as I have already said, production is like a bubble in a whirlpool of speculation. We will say a bubble. Production is like a bubble in a whirlpool of speculation. That is today the situation. That much is the expansion of finance capital. So in this situation, we know the material base, super exploitation of the working class is going on everywhere, and plunder of nature, ecological crisis, environmental catastrophe, super exploitation of working class, and biggest plunder of nature by corporate capital is going on. That is the situation. This is the material basis. I will come to the ideological question.
இங்க நிறைய பேசியிருக்காரு. நான் சம மட்டும் பார்த்தேன் அப்படின்னு பேசுற சிரமமான செய்யலாம். புதிய பாசிசத்தின் அடிப்படையில் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா நிதி மூலதனம் பெருக்கம். நிதி மூலதனத்தை வந்து பெருக்கும் பொழுது அதிகபட்ச சுரண்டல், அதிகபட்ச ஊழல்தனம், இது எல்லாமே கொண்டு வந்து ஊழல் நிறைந்த ஆட்சிகளை தொடர்ச்சியாக இந்த நிதி மூலதன சூழல் வந்து கொண்டு வந்திருக்குது. இதுல என்னன்னா இந்த நிதி மூலதன பெருக்கம் இப்ப வந்திருக்கல முக்கியமான பாத்தீங்கன்னா இதுல உற்பத்திங்கிறது ஒரு பெரிய அளவு ஒண்ணு இருக்காது. ஆனா ஊக வணிகத்தின் வழியாக இது பெருசா இருக்க போல ஒரு நீர்க்குமிழி போல தொடர்ச்சியாக செயல்பட்டு இருக்குது. பொதுவா நம்ம பார்த்தோம்னா இந்த புதிய தாராளவாதம் எப்ப வந்துச்சு காலத்துக்கு வந்து 1970களில் வந்துச்சு. ஏன்னா ஏகாதிபத்திய வீழ்ச்சி எப்போ வந்து தொடங்குதோ அப்ப என்ன பண்ணுதுன்னா இந்த புதிய தாராளவாதத்தை எல்லா நாடுகள்லயும் தொடர்ச்சியா வந்து திரிச்சிட்டு வந்திருக்கு. அதை வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா முன்னாடியே நமக்கு தெரியும், சீனா வந்து ஒரு சோசியலிச சமூக ஏகாதிபத்தியமா ரஷ்யா வந்து 1970 வருது. அதே நேரத்தில் சீனாவை என்ன பண்ணுதுன்னா மூலாத்துவ பாதையில அதனுடைய நடவடிக்கை வந்து தொடங்கி வைக்குது. அதே நேரத்தில் என்ன புரிஞ்சுக்கணும்னா ட்ரம்ப் இன்னைக்கு எப்படி இந்திய நாட்டை நடத்துறாரோ அதே போல சீனாவை நடத்த மாட்டாரு. சீனால இருக்க சீ ஜான் அவருடைய அதிபரை பார்த்தா ட்ரம்புக்கு ஒரு பயம் உண்டு. அதனால சீனாவுக்கு அவர் மரியாதையாக தான் நடந்துக்கிறாரு. இன்னும் சொல்ல போனா சீனாவோட கருத்துக்களை எதிர்பார்க்கிறார். அதுக்கு ஏற்ற மாதிரி தான் ட்ரம்போட நடவடிக்கை இன்னைக்கு அமைஞ்சிருக்குது. ஆனால் சீனா ஏகாதிபத்தியத்தை நம்ம அப்படியே போய் மேற்குலகத்தின் ஏகாதிபத்தியத்தோடு பொருத்தி பார்க்க முடியாது. ரெண்டு வெவ்வேறு வகையான ஏகாதிபத்தியம். சீன ஏகாதிபத்தியம் ஒரு தனித்துவம் வாய்ந்தது. அது சீன கலாச்சார பண்பாடு இதோட சேர்ந்து அந்த மனநிலையை நம்ம புரிஞ்சிக்க வேண்டியிருக்கு. இப்படிதான் ஒவ்வொரு இடத்துலயும் ஏகாதிபத்தியம் ஒரு தன்மையை மாத்திக்கிட்டே வந்திருக்குது. ஒரு பக்கம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா 1930லயே ஏகாதிபத்திய நெருக்கடி வந்துருச்சு. இந்த ஏகாதிபத்திய நெருக்கடிங்கிறது ஏற்கனவே குறிப்பிட்ட மாதிரி இந்த ஏகாதிபத்தியம் இந்த மூலதனங்கிறது தொடர் நெருக்கடியை சந்திக்கும். அது அதனுடைய தொடர்ச்சினா அந்த நம்ம மார்க்சிய அறிவியல் படி தொடர்ச்சி நடக்க வேண்டியது. அப்ப 1930ல ஏகாதிபத்தியம் பெரும் பின்னடைவை சந்திக்குது. அதே நேரத்தில் அன்னைக்கு இடதுசாரிகள் களத்துல இருந்தாங்க. இடதுசாரிகள் அன்னைக்கு சர்வதேச அளவுல மிகப்பெரிய முன்னெடுப்புக்கு போய் பல நாடுகள்ல இடதுசாரிகளுக்கான சாத்தியக்கூறு நிறைய அமைஞ்சது. ஆனா அந்த நேரத்துல தான் நம்ம பார்க்கக்கூடிய இந்த கினீசிய பொருளாதார நலத்திட்டங்கள், நான் சொல்ல மக்கள் நலன் அரசு, ஸ்டேட் ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டி பீப்புள்ஸ் பார்த்துக்கணும் சில திட்டங்கள் அறிவிக்கிறாங்க. அந்த காலகட்டத்தை முதலாளித்துவ பொருளாதார வர்க்கம் என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா அது ஒரு பொற்காலம், மக்களுக்கான பொற்காலம், மூலதனத்துக்கான பொற்காலம் முதலாளித்துவ அறிஞர்கள் வர்ணிச்சாலும் 1930-35 தொடர்ந்த அந்த கினீசிய பொருளாதார மாற்றங்கள் 1970லயே பெரும்பாலும் நிறுத்தப்படுது. ஏன்னா அதுக்குள்ள அவங்க சந்திக்கிற மூலதன நெருக்கடி, அந்த மூலதனங்கள் என்ன அவங்களுக்கு லாபம் அதிகமா வேணும், அதே நேரத்தில் சுரண்டல் அதிகமா நடக்கணும், டேமேஜ் ஆகக்கூடாது, உற்பத்தி அதிகமா நடக்கலாம். உற்பத்தி அதிகம் நடக்கும்போது அதுக்கான சந்தைகள் தேவைப்படுது. சந்தைகள் தேவைப்படும் பொழுது ஏகாதிபத்தியம் அதனுடைய வேலையை காட்டாம இல்லை. அந்த நேரத்தில் பல நாடுகள் கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமா இந்த மக்கள் நலன்புரி அரசுங்கிற ஸ்டேட்ல இருந்து மாறி மீண்டும் ஏகாதிபத்திய நாடுகளா அந்த ஏகாதிபத்திய நாடு வந்து நம்ம இன்னைக்கு பார்க்கக்கூடிய நவ காலனியம், புதிய காலனியம்ங்கிற இது புதிய ஏகாதிபத்தியம் வந்து வருது. புதிய தாராளவாதம் வந்து வருது. இந்த புதிய தாராளவாதத்தை என்ன வந்து வலியுறுத்துதுன்னா தட்டுப்பாடற்ற எங்கேயும் வந்து மூலதனத்தை நிறுத்தக்கூடாது. மூலதனம் அது பாட்டு அலைபாட்டு பாக அது எங்க இருந்தாலும் மூலதன சுரண்டலை கொண்டு வந்து பெரும் கார்பரேட் வணிகத்து குழுக்கு இதுல எந்த தங்கு தடையும் இருக்கக்கூடாதுங்கிறத இதை முன் வச்சாங்க. அதே நேரத்துல இவங்க இன்னைக்கு காட்டிட்டு இருக்க இந்த ஊக வணிகங்கிறது முக்கிய பங்கு வகிக்குது. அந்த ஊக வணிகங்கிறது ஒரு நீர்ப்பு மூலியமா இருக்கான். அது எப்பனாலும் டக்குன்னு உடனே ஒண்ணுமே இருக்க போதா. ஆனா அதை வைத்துதான் இன்னைக்கு இந்த உலகத்தில் இருக்க அனைத்து நாடுகளும் உலகம் ஏதோ முன்னோக்கி சென்று கொண்டு போய் காட்டிட்டு இருக்கிறாங்க. அதனால இதையெல்லாம் நம்ம புரிஞ்சுக்கணும். இந்த புதிய தாராளம் என்ன பண்ணிருக்குன்னா வெறும் உழைப்பு சுரண்டல் மட்டும் இல்லை, இயற்கை சுரண்டலையும் இயற்கை சீரழிக்கும் தன்மையை கொண்டு போயிருக்கு. இயற்கை பெருமளவு சீரழிக்கிறது, தொழிலாளர்கள் உழைப்பை கட்டற்ற வகையில் எல்லா நாடுகளையும் சுரண்டி கொண்டே இருக்கிறது. இதுதான் இந்த புதிய தாராளவாதம் உலகத்துக்கு கொடுத்துட்டு இருக்குது.
So the problem today is a complex. It's very complex today. It is not a single thing. So for example, when we say about neo-fascism, its manifestations are also complex. Now these what is called leftist weakening. Why leftist weakening? Internationally, not only in India, we are also claiming, I am not saying we are not communists, we are also communists, but there are many communists. But why they are failing? They cannot come to an understanding. I am not saying that unprincipled unity is possible. Some people are saying that we have to unite on what basis? Communists can unite only on the basis of ideological position. Without ideology, communism cannot exist. So we have to unite on the basis of ideological clarity. That is the main point. We have to discuss what is the concrete situation, and only if we can analyze the concrete situation in a proper way, we can unravel the reality, only can we unite. But for that we need a method. We need a methodology. We have only one methodology. That is the Marxist methodology. In spite of we say that left is weakening, in spite of we say that the communist parties are unable to do anything when neo-fascism is advancing, still it is only the communists, it is only the Marxists who can analyze this. No other forces can do. No other forces can properly analyze the laws of motion of capital, because it is Marxism that clearly started analyzing capital. So capital has many transformations today. Capital is transforming, and these transformations have brought about many changes in the world, imperialism and global oppression, plunder, etc. For example, Many people are saying international industrial proletariat. From the 80s onward, after Thatcherism, economics, everything came and globalization started, all these things you know. Then, along with this, a series of reactionary ideologies also were put forward. Postmodernism, post-Marxism, with intensified vigor, identity politics. Each oppressed should unite as itself. Commonality was denied. The oppressed, there are many categories of oppressed. Identity politics says that instead of commonality, the one oppressed should be united against the, that is putting one oppressed against the other. That is the meaning of identity politics. We are not against identity. There is identity. The oppressed has an identity. Oppressed in our country has identity, no doubt. The Muslims, they are the oppressed in India because they are denied citizenship. So they have to unite like that. The Dalits, that is their identity. We are not against that. But identity politics is, instead of the unity of the oppressed, it will be putting each identity in each category. That is identity politics. So this disaggregation, decentering of this unity, that type of an idea also was came, and many theories came. The working class is no more an agent of change. Everything came. Along with that, we know that by the 90s, what happened? Soviet Union, in namesake, Soviet Union also collapsed. Then declaration came, end of ideology, end of history, Daniel Bell, Francis Fukuyama, American theories, everything you know. I need not explain to you, many of you know better than me. So many ideologies came. It was in that context that clash of civilizations, everything came. You know, many theories came. Then, along with that, a new enemy also came. Up to that time, communism was the single most enemy. But from the 90s onward, under this neoliberal, that means after the collapse of Soviet Union, they declared that communism is also dead. But they, even though they declared it, still communism is their number one enemy, we know. Along with that, because no communist party in namesake in Europe or nowhere in power, therefore communism is also dead. Along with that, another enemy is also put forward, that is Islamophobia. That is a global war on terror. Islam was put. Muslims were targeted as the enemy. What is in the basis of neo-Fascism in Europe? What is the base of Trump? All are Islamophobic. What is the essence of the Palestine question also? It is Islamophobic basically. Islam is the number one enemy or behind terror today. That has become a global ideology. Not only of RSS in India. In Europe also there is a many neo-fascists of Europe. There is one Netherlands. What is his name? Geert Wilders. His Freedom Party. His party's name is Freedom Party. His name, Party of Freedom, something like that. That is the name. He is standing for a de-Islamization of Europe. He says, de-Islamization of Europe. Islam is the number one enemy. And everywhere, anti-Muslimness or Islamophobia has become the ideological basis of fascism at a global level. Along with this material, this internationalization of capital and financialization, this growth of speculative capital, etc. Along with that, Islam is also put forward as an enemy ideologically. But according to the concrete situation in countries, any ideology can be used. Anything can be used. along with anti-Islam, along with anti-Muslimness, Islamophobia, at a global level, if Trump is using Islamophobia, Europe is also using Islamophobia. Many ideologies, any ideology can be used. Ethno-nationalism, xenophobia, anti-immigrantism, anything can be used. Even neo-tribalism can be used. Evangelism. Here Hindutva, Manusmriti. So any Buddhism can be used. In Sri Lanka and in Myanmar, even Buddhism can be used as ideological base of fascism. Any country can be fascist. There is no need of that country should be imperialist. That is a classical period before Second World War. Today, fascism can be in any country, whether it is poor or imperialist or capitalist. That is the situation today. That is globalization. Capital has become internationalized. Capital has become internationalized. Therefore, fascism can operate in any country. That is neo-fascism compared with the classical fascism. So here, this question is also to be understood carefully. When we discuss on the Palestine question with our friends, European Communist parties who are members of ICOR, we are open, we can say. They are saying that Hamas is as dangerous as Zionists. They are balancing Hamas with the Zionists. Communists. Many European communists are, so-called revolutionary communists are having a balancing approach, equating Hamas with the Zionism. Is it true, comrades? Hamas is not a jihadist organization. I am not a supporter, I am not a proponent of Hamas. Don't misunderstand me. Hamas is a resistance organization. There are many resistance forces in the world. I have read Hamas, their program, their 2017 program, I have read. In that program, they say that they stand for a Palestine where Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, anybody can live together. They want a secular state. That is their declared position now. Whether they are jihadists, whether they are misogynist, whether they are terrorists, whether they are fascists. Many self-professed left parties in Europe call these Hamas as a fascist organization. This is the influence of Islamophobia, deep rooted all over the world. A typical case is India. No, Hamas is not a Marxist organization, no doubt, but it's a resistance organization. It has its own means of resisting Zionism and imperialism. That's another question. Comrades, I will finish my presentation by 8:30. Don't, because this cannot be concluded. We will continue the discussion. I will just present some more things. Now, what is the situation in India, you know? I need not explain, because when RSS, RSS was formed today. When we started, we said that the biggest fascist organization in the world, hundreds of secret and open organizations. This controlling the military, the civil administration, the bureaucracy, everything, education, everything, every field, micro, macro, every sphere of Indian society, everywhere. It is street power, state power, everything under control of ourselves today. That is the situation. So such an organization, when the time of its formation itself, it declared that Muslim is the number one enemy in India. Golwalkar said, their piece. Muslims are the number one enemy of India. And he even adored Hitler. How Hitler is resolving the Jewish problem in Germany. In the same manner, we have to resolve the problem of Muslims in India. That is his statement. This position is now more seriously put forward by RSS today. You know everything. Every sphere of Indian society, every activity of the regime is Islamophobic, anti-Muslim. So this is not an specifically Indian situation. At a global level also, now this anti-Muslimness, Islamophobia is an ideological basis of neo-fascism in most countries of the world. Using many other ideological positions are there. In this context, what should be the task of the left? That is the point. Many, the outcome is very clear. The working class, most super exploited. No, they are organizationally weak. Even the left is incapable to organize them. And even the oppressed, other oppressed, in countries like India, even the minimum rights, minimum democratic rights of the oppressed the Dalits are being taken away. Even their constitutionally guaranteed reservation is also in crisis. Dilution, it is also diluted. Economic reservation is wrong. Maybe, and even the Supreme Court is also intervening. But no discussion on caste census. If a caste census will come, we know what will happen. Everything will be clear. Everything will be known. Because now 77% of the class 1 post, IAS post in India is held by 3% of the Indian Brahmins. 3% of the Brahmins hold 77% of the IAS post. 25% of the SC/ST sections, even though they have 25% reservation, their holding class 1 post is very minimum. So if a caste census comes, everything will be clear before the people. Let us discuss afterwards what to do. Information should be there, data should be there. That is also information, data, statistics are very important. Not as measured by today. Today's statistics data measured by Indian state is not experienced by common people. The data they measure, their statistics are not experienced by common people. Not like that. Let the statistics, let the data, let the information come. Then the people will know which caste or which section of the society holds the property of the country, who are the corporates, who are the scientists, who are the landowners, who are the bureaucrats. Let it come out why we are afraid. Then people will discuss. So these are now, but our RSS says that a caste census will be against social harmony. If caste census is done, it will be against social harmony. That is their position. RSS formal position. So we know the left should take appropriate position on all these questions. Economic policy, budget, as already stated, the seriousness of the situation, the displacement going on, rise of slums, everything we know, I already stated that the majority of the Indian people are going down, their purchasing power is going down, their real income is going down, unemployment is unprecedented, and the people, workers are becoming unorganized, informal, all these problems are there. So in this context, even without left, many countries, even without a alternative, a political alternative, people are coming forward in many countries of the world. Sri Lanka also, people came forward, but what will happen? The regime that came, he is more seriously implementing IMF programs. That is what he is doing, this is an idea. He is implementing IMF conditionalities there more seriously. So that is the situation today. So there is not a revolutionary alternative. A revolutionary left is lacking all over the world today. This is not a specific country specific situation. And even in the absence of a revolutionary left, what happens? Among the ruling classes, populist policies are put forward. Populism. Delhi we have seen. Aam Aadmi, Kejriwal, he put forward many freebies. Freebie means free electricity, free water, free bus ticket for women. BJP came, they said that we will give more. Collapsed. Because he is post-ideological. He says that there is no ideology. He is also neoliberal. He is also having no alternative except freebies. Giving free something, that's all. He is also neoliberal. He is also corrupt. So there is no within the ruling classes. This populism is giving rise to fascist upsurge. Trump in America. This is populism. Trump is using the white labor also against the immigrants, against the Hispanics, against Afro-Americans. There he won. So the vast majority of the common people also are led by populist policies. We are not having a base. Even though we are ideologically, we claim that left is ideologically advanced, we are unable to have a ideological political base. Depoliticization the ruling classes, the neoliberal forces, the neo-fascist forces, capital, corporate capital, the ruling classes, they are successful in depoliticizing the masses, de-ideologizing the masses. We are not in a position. So this is the situation that we are facing. The neoliberal, many details are there. Neoliberalism is intensifying. Neo-fascism is intensifying. But left is divided. Why? Because we are having, still we are, my opinion is that there is no condition that we will be correct. Suppose one left organization, we are correct, we are not going to have any discussion or anything. Let us see. Suppose somebody is leading, we should accept that. Why we are not accepting? If comrade is leading, why can I accept it? No problem. So let us have an open discussion on all these questions. First of all, we should have a start from facts. Don't start from textbooks. Marxism is not a religion. We should be open. We should be open. Marxism is if it is a science, if it is a scientific method, then we have to apply it according to the concrete situation. Only some Marxism can develop. Otherwise, Marxism cannot be developed. Therefore, let us have. I am not saying that we should immediately go for a unity. That is impossible. And if you go for it, it will be dangerous. Because without an ideological polarization, without having an ideological clarity, unity among the left is meaningless. You can have issue-based unity. You can have unity based on minimum agenda, no problem. But left unity, communist unity can only be possible based on ideological, political clarity. That will, otherwise it will be wrong. That will not be communist. Therefore, on that question, we need a serious evaluation and discussion. That is the point that I want to conclude. We need a serious evaluation, a serious discussion on many questions where we fail. Why situation is favorable? Contradictions are intensifying. But still left cannot intervene. Rightist forces are advancing. They are taking advantage of the situation. They are intensifying their plunder. They are intensifying their profit. But we are nowhere. Therefore, on this question, we need a serious discussion, introspection. We should openly, there is no question of any superimposition of one's ideology on another, or position on another, views on another. Let us have an open discussion. Let us have a debate, discussion, and if possible, work together. Based on that, we can move forward. But at the same time, can I finish? At the same time, we are in a fascist situation. Fascism is a very dangerous, very specific. It is a very dangerous, frightening situation. We know. It is not a normal situation. That is why the difference between fascist and non-fascist. Even though there are neoliberal, many, even Tamil Nadu also, we know the government is neoliberal. You know, they are also implementing neoliberal policies. Nobody will question me if I say. But whether they are fascist, no. So all ruling classes are not fascist. Many ruling classes are neoliberal. Now they are implementing neoliberal policies. But everybody is not fascist. So we have to make a difference between fascist and non-fascist sections. So anti-fascist sections, progressive sections, including non-fascist section, should have minimum understanding as to how fascists can be defeated, resisted and defeated, exposed. That is important. In doing so, when we unite, it is very careful that we should not surrender our class interests. We should not surrender our ideological, political independence. That is also very important. Otherwise, what will happen if we go for communist left forces, go with the ruling class parties, neoliberal forces against fascists, which are the danger, of course. Against fascists, sometimes tactically we have to unite. That is what happened in the Second World War. Stalin, led by Stalin, he made an alliance with America and Britain. Churchill and Roosevelt, you know everything. Stalin made anti-fascist united front. They are imperialists. Still, to defeat Hitler and Mussolini, this alliance, anti-fascist alliance was needed. But there a big mistake happened. What was the mistake? Communist International was dissolved to appease them. What is Communist International? It is a strategic weapon of the communists, working class and oppressed. So surrendering the class interest, the strategic long-term interest of the working class and oppressed in the name of anti-fascist struggle will be suicidal. We should always uphold our political ideological independence. Keeping that position, we can unite with even non-fascist forces for defeating fascism. That is the immediate question. But the long-term question is changing the society. On that question, only the communists can take that responsibility. No other forces can take that task. Only communists have an ideology, a program, a position as to change the society. A society where there will not be any exploitation, there will not be any plunder, and therefore where there will be human beings can respect each other and live together, there will not be any exploitation by one on another. So such a society, that is our ideology, our understanding. So for that, we should apply, we should develop our ideology, our ideological political understanding according to the concrete situation. And that is what, when we explain this, I need not go into all details, many facts are there. But we should have a proper perspective, only then we will be capable to move forward. That is what we want to say in this contest. Comrade, I thank the comrades who heard me, and I especially thank the Tamil Nadu CPM Maharashtra Tamil Nadu committee for inviting me to present my opinion in this contest, and for all those comrades and friends who listen me. Thank you.